Hi, this is Carl again, and this is part 8 of the discussion on Lingua language learning methodology. And the topic which I've chosen for this particular recording is private language schools, for example, Lingua versus mainstream education and modern foreign language learning in mainstream education. So what I'm wanting to do here is to draw comparisons, especially amongst the advantages of learning a modern foreign language in mainstream education and learning a modern foreign language in a private language school or with a private language school, for example, in a private one-to-one learning setting or small group setting, which is being paid for privately. One of the main advantages which comes to mind as far as language learning in mainstream education is concerned is that the fees for these students are obviously lower. The regularity of work for the teacher is much more stable and is less likely, well, is not likely at all to be infrequent or sporadic as regards the duration of the course. One of the disadvantages of mainstream education is that the individual contact time which exists between a student and a teacher is very minimal, but within a classroom setting you're able to make friends, you're able to ask one another what their own learning preferences are, you're able to discuss with peers within the classroom environment which are their strengths, which are their weaknesses, where they feel as though they're failing or not making as much progress as they'd like to. So you're able to, in that respect, sympathise with the needs of other students and then compare those needs with your own needs. Another disadvantage of learning modern foreign languages in mainstream education is that in addition to the minimal contact time which exists between a student and a teacher, is that the course syllabus tends to be broken down into topics for which there won't necessarily be ample opportunities for revision, because the pressures from the curriculum manager will often be this has to be assessed by this particular date and that topic has to be assessed by that particular date. If the student fails the assessment, they'll have to do it again, or it may be a case of you have to study this topic, then you have to study that topic, and then at the end of the semester or at the end of the year you'll have to take either an assessment or an exam. The exam will be done like this. You will not know what you're going to be studying in the exam, and for the majority of people, especially for adult language learners, they feel as though this kind of imposition, the fact that they're told that at the end of the year they will have to complete an assessment or a qualification, this will arguably perturb some people and put them under a great deal of pressure, because they will feel and they will know that they have to match up to a certain standard and match up to the expectations which the exam awarding body lays down within its own specifications in order to achieve any particular grade. But obviously everyone who enrolls on a course will want the best grade possible if they choose to take the exam, whereas others will not be as fussy about wanting to take an exam. All they want is, after they've enrolled on a language learning course, is to gain as much proficiency and experience in using the spoken language as far as possible in order to communicate with native speakers of the language which they're learning. If we move to language learning in a private setting, then the advantages are greater than they would be with language learning in a mainstream education setting, but there are obviously at the same time a number of disadvantages. One of those being the increased cost for a lesson in comparison with what you would be paying out in mainstream education, although personally in Lingua we try to keep our fees lower than the average in spite of the amount of experience which we've had and the amount of research which we've undertaken into effective modern foreign language learning, and we have arguably managed to maintain high retention rates amongst students, especially since 2007, when especially my approach to language learning took a turn for the better. But at the same time, another disadvantage of language learning within the private sector is that the tutor cannot guarantee regularity of work. People will arguably, and for any number of their own reasons, give up after a certain period of time. People will cancel their language learning lessons for a number of different reasons. And in that case, the tutor has to be very careful as to whether he or she decides to charge that particular individual for cancelling the lesson, depending on the reason and the degree of notice which was being given. But at the same time, there are numerous advantages of learning a modern foreign language within the private setting. For example, the tutor has a greater amount of individual contact time with you as the learner. The tutor will then know just where you are with your level of learning, what your previous experiences with learning have been, which levels you've studied at, whether you've taken any exams or qualifications, and will be able to listen to your own learning needs and give you as much support as possible, as I have done in Lingua using a number of different systems, all of which are very effective and which can guarantee any learner linguistic proficiency by integrating both a number of strategies, including what I call neuro-linguistic programming. I've no time to talk here about what that means, although I will do at a later stage. And then the tutor will also be able to integrate as many different learning strategies and learning techniques as possible in order to meet your own learner needs. And as I said, that does comprise the gamut of the advantages of learning languages within the private setting.